Amen. Well, let's take our books tonight. Turn me down just a little bit, Chandler, if you don't mind. Take our books tonight, page number 93, 94. We'll look at 94. I believe it was week 4 last. I believe it was week 4 last. We started this lesson as we looked at patience, and we looked at patience expressed in Psalm chapter 40, verse 1, David. King David had some things going on in his life, much like each one of us tonight as we was given prayer requests. There's things going on in our life, and we have situations that arise that's oftentimes not pleasant to deal with, and no doubt David knew what it was to go through some things in life. But he said there in Psalm chapter 40 and verse number 1, I waited patiently for the Lord. Amen. Sometimes we just need to slow down and wait on God, and God to lead and guide us. Amen. For not every open door is the will of God. And so we need to know the voice of God. As I thought about this, I thought about Joshua chapter 8. You can go back in Joshua chapter 7, chapter 8. You find that Joshua was leading the children of Israel, and they conquer that great city of Jericho. And there was a sin committed in that Achan had taken the good Babylonian garment and some silver and gold. And you find in Joshua chapter 8 where they go out to face King Ai. And if you read chapter 8, you'll look in chapter 7 when they was going to conquer Jericho, that you can see the Lord's with them. He's speaking to them. He's guiding their steps. In chapter 8, you'll never see the voice of God. Amen. And they go out in their own strength, or they consider their own strength, not waiting on God to direct them, not knowing that someone had committed a sin in that camp. And you'll see that there was great defeat happen there. And if they would have probably just waited on God to hear the voice of God, and so often we get ahead of God, whether it's something that we have going on in our life that alters the ear of God to our voice, or maybe we're not hearing the voice of God, but we get impatient. We want to do it in our time, in our time frame, and we miss what God has for us. And so David said, I had some things going on, but he said, I patiently waited on the Lord. And so we need to learn to wait on God and for God to direct and guide in our life. But let's look at our observations tonight. We're going to move through observations. On number 1, it says, patience is required. If you can't learn to wait on God to work in your life, you will miss many blessings. You may even cause future problems by jumping ahead of God into things unattended for you. Like I said just a few minutes ago, not every open door or opportunity is the will of God. Amen. I've been some times that there was things, or I had an open door or something I could have tried to move forward with, but I never had peace from God. Amen. I just several times in my own mind right now I can think of where I could have made a choice or a decision, but I knew that wasn't the direction of God. Amen. There was concern there on my behalf, but I could have moved forward with it, but I never had peace with God. Amen. We don't make decisions in our flesh, because I've made many decisions in myself, and I'll mess things up. And so and there's no doubt there's been some times that I've made decisions, and it talks about these future problems. We have to say, oh me, amen. When we make a decision on our own without God and without God leading us, how often the future problems come about later on. I always say you can make whatever choice you want, but what you're not free from is the consequences of it. Amen. There's going to be consequences. And so if we move ahead without God leading and guiding us, there's sure to be consequences to pay. On number 2, it says in Luke, we learn that bringing forth fruit in the Christian life requires patience. Think of it as one of the ingredients of fruit bearing. Amen. And one of the ingredients of fruit bearing is patience. We could go back and look in 2 Peter chapter 5, verse number 8. He says, in giving all diligence, and beside this, giving all diligence, add to our faith. And it goes on and lists those things that we've been looking at, and patience is one of those things. It's got to be cultivated. Amen. It's a ingredient to bearing fruit in our life. Amen. Patience is one of those things, and it's been so prevalent in my life, I guess, because we're going through this. Just last week we was headed Friday up to Atlanta, and of course we're running late, and I just set the cruise and we're driving, and I'm trying to be calm and patient, and I'm on the road, and I think at first we get off the interstate and get on kind of a back road, and there's a train. And this train, it stopped. And we're sitting there, and I'm like, 5 minutes goes by. And we're already left about 30 minutes late. 20 minutes, I told Ash, I said, I think I can go around this train and come around. I started to get a little impatient, and so we did, and as soon as we got up to where the train was, there was a road that turned left, and we're right there at the train by the time the train starts moving. And so we continue on our route and get around. Well, now we have to come back. Well, the train gets finished and all this traffic's going, and we just watch. I said, yep, that's where we was in line. Wait another 10 minutes. Just got in. I didn't lose my cool, but I was a little impatient if I would have just waited. Amen. And then we get behind a slow driver. All of them traffic, you're going to get, it's a mile long. And how quick we can get impatient, and it cost us. Amen. And so I had to experience that. But even this week, one day I got on the job site and was getting aggravated, and I just left for a minute, calmed down, prayed, seeked God's face, and said, you know what, it's going to be okay. I was getting impatient, but this has been so prevalent in my life, and it'll be a help to us. And I think about what others see through us. Amen. When we just slow down and we wait on God, can I tell you, others have noticed that. But it's an ingredient in fruit bearing in our life. Number 3, it says patience is connected to hope. Can I tell you, we got to trust God's timing. Amen. Knowing that He's going to bring about the outcome. Amen. God's in control. And so this brings about, this patience is connected to hope, knowing that God's going to take care of it. Amen. We'd raise our hand, every one of us, and say, hey, we trust God. But can I tell you, impatience or not waiting or not showing patience, that's not showing that we trust Him. Amen. If we're going to try to do it ourselves instead of waiting on God, we don't have trust. Amen. So this patience is connected to hope. They both are born out of faith. We wait for the things we hope for by faith. We wait for that timing, for His direction, for Him to open the door, amen, for Him to create the path that He wants us to take. And number 4, it says in Romans 15:5, our God is described as a God of patience. If that is true, He can certainly grant some to you. But remember, that does not come instantly. Patience has to be cultivated. It must grow over time, and we'll lack that last word, experience. Amen. Sometimes you just got to sit at the train tracks. I remember coming out of Savannah one day, and I was on one of those back roads. Jacob probably knows that area. I sat behind this train. I'm telling you, I should have went around this time because it was like an hour and a half. Just stuck there. It takes sometimes going through some things. It takes some experiences to gain patience in our life, but that's not always fun. But God's trying to do a work, and we've got to learn to wait on God. Number 5, it says, it is interesting that the Hebrew writer describes those who cultivate patience in their lives as not slothful. Who knows what the word slothful means? Lazy. Amen. He said, hey, if you're going to cultivate, it's going to take some effort. What does 2 Peter 5:8? And beside this, what? Giving all what? Diligence. You know what it's going to take to cultivate some patience, Brother Dude? It's going to take some effort. Amen. It's going to take something on your behalf. He's given the commandment. He said he didn't say He was going to create it. He said, in giving all diligence, add to your faith. He's saying, hey, you got a responsibility to add some patience to your faith. Amen. You're going to have to go through some things. You think about cultivating. I go back and tell you, I don't have that green thumb. Can I tell you, it takes work. Amen. It takes work to grow, to plant, to water, fertilizing, to preparing the ground, the planting, but even the harvesting. It all takes work. And He said, hey, give all diligence, give all effort. Amen. And add into our faith some patience. It's got to be cultivated, but you can't be lazy or slothful. Number 6, it says, knowing that we have such great examples of faith and patience in the lives of believers who lived before us, we should be motivated to pace ourselves for the marathon of faith throughout our lives. It is the patience that allows us to pace our journey in this faith life. I thought about, as we think about that pace in the journey of life, as you would think about a sprinter. Amen. Can I tell you, we're not in it for the sprinting. A sprinter, he gives out early. Amen. He can't run the long distance. Amen. And we're running a marathon. We're running long. This is a whole life. Amen. And so we're to pace ourselves. Go to Hebrews 12:1. I know we looked at it a few weeks ago, but look at Hebrews 12:1. It talks about these great examples we have before us. And I think about men and women of God. I usually go to think about Brother Billy Boatwright. I mean, he was an older man in the faith, and I didn't know him very well. But every testimony I ever heard of Billy Boatwright, he just served God. He was faithful and served God. I don't know if he did his whole life, but as far as I know, he just lived for God. And I would like to die with that. And I'm sure he went through some things that have been easy to throw in the towel and quit. But amen, he had some patience and he just stuck with it. And to the day he died, he was faithful. Amen. I can remember him walking in here, big man, big old giant hands, but just as tender of a heart as you'd ever meet. Amen. Why? Because God lived in him. Amen. But he showed some patience. He stuck it out for the long haul. To the day he died, amen, his wife still comes every Sunday by herself. Amen. What? Just serving God. It takes some patience to pace ourselves through the life of faith. Amen. Hebrews 12:1, it says, wherefore, seeing we are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses. He said there's such a multitude, amen. There's a cloud of witnesses that we're compassed about with. He said, let us lay aside every weight and sin that does so easily beset us. And let us run with what? Patience, amen. He said, Paul was telling him, he said, run with some patience the race that is set before us, amen, that we have a life to live. Amen. But can I tell you, if we're going to live for God, it's going to take some patience. It's going to take some patience. You're going to go through some things. Jacob, you've been through some things, my friend. This church has been through, everyone in this, we've had hurt, we've had pain, discouragement, disappointment, anger. We've all gone through things, but it takes some patience to go through the race of life, especially walking with God. Yes, ma'am. Right. 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 Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think about that. I've heard people say that, use the verse, be still and know that I am God. He don't mean just sit down there and he means just serve me. Amen. I had someone tell me, I made the statement, I said, I don't know, I was going through a hard time, I said, I don't know what to do, and he gave me a little message, and I don't remember all the points and stuff. It says, but what to do when I don't know what to do. The first thing he said is just keep doing what you're doing. It ain't time to sit down, amen. We're waiting for God, but you just keep serving Him, amen. But yeah, a good point there. He said, let us run. We're still running. We're still moving forward. We're still advancing in the race for God. But we're going to do it with patience, waiting for Him. Amen. Waiting for Him to speak, waiting for Him to guide as He does so. But I love that Hebrews 12:1 there. I think it shows that there's others that went before us. Amen. They set a pattern. They set an example. They're that cloud of witnesses. Amen. We can look to and say, hey, I want to die with that. I want to die with that kind. I've been to some funerals where there wasn't a whole lot of good to say about them. Amen. They was mean or grumpy, or she or me was mean. I want to die with one. Hey, he loved God. Amen. Brother Jeff said he wanted to die with three things. Amen. A faithful tithing record, a wore-out Bible, and a happy devil. Amen. Happy that he was going and had to fight with him. Hey, I want to die with that kind of testimony. Amen. That he loved God. King David, a man after God's own. Was he perfect? No, he wasn't perfect. Man, I just got through reading through it. His life was a wreck at points. His children was an absolute mess. Amen. But God said he was a man after His own heart. I want to die with that testimony. But it's going to take some patience if we're going to get there. It's going to take some adding to your. It's going to take you deciding, hey, I'm tired of living the way I'm living. I want to live for God. You got at some point you can't. He says, how long do you halt between two decisions? Amen. A double-minded man is unstable. We got to make a decision. Hey, I'm gonna put some patience in my life. Amen. Tomorrow I'm not gonna get below the top. I'm gonna calm down and just wait for God. Just to do the things them decisions that people making that you don't like, and maybe the doctors are not advising. Hey, just wait on God. Amen. He'll work it out. You knowing that He's going to take care of it, you just trust Him. Amen. It'll come about. He'll take care of it. Whatever the outcome is, God's going to take care of it. Amen. He's faithful. But let's look at our questions for discussion tonight. We may get through maybe one, maybe two. But number one, it says, imagine the cost of impatience. You ever think about the cost of something?
Sure, if we go to purchase something, I go to Walmart, I look at the cost. But what about, I preached a message one time, consider the cost of sin. Considering the cost. I thought about Adam and Eve, if they would have just, in their mind, wrapped around the cost of what they was fixing to do. And surely we look and say, hindsight's 20/20. How often do we repeat the same thing? How often do we reap a consequence of impatience, and then the next day we do the same thing and deal with the same consequences? But it says there, imagine the cost of impatience. What problems could impatience cause a person who is not willing to wait on God to work? What do you think? What's some problems? Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Then I go back and I think, the Lord was probably working, and I just set the whole thing back. Lay the foundation again.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I probably just do a monkey wrench and all that the Lord was working on with the heart and just, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we're sometimes we're so quick, we're not patient, and we're so quick to offer advice or to offer what we think is going to help someone. But can I tell you, oftentimes God does, or even in ministry, I've watched it before. Somebody wants to address something, or they want to change something about somebody else, and so instead of letting God, sometimes we just need to wait on Him. I've heard pastors say many times, "Hey, when God changes their heart, you ain't got to worry about it." Amen. Sometimes we just got to be patient. We can be so hypercritical of everything and everyone else. I tell you, the best person I remember sitting there as a lost person. When God saved me, I got saved, and then I'm thankful that somebody didn't come up and say, "Hey, you really need to cut your hair, and you probably shouldn't, live like this." I'm glad that He just let God deal with me. They didn't come over and say, "Well, you're using an NIV Bible, No, they just let God, and God done it. Amen. And when God does it, it'll stick. Amen. We can get them to clean up. We have a bunch of whited sepulchres, and they can fit the fit and make the mold. Amen. But can I tell you, if God ain't on the inside, it's just dead bones. Amen. So we need to let God just do the work. Amen. But I've always got something to say. Just ask me. Amen. But sometimes we need to make sure God's want it to be said. Amen. And so we need to be patient. What else? What other problems you think could impatient cause a person who is not willing to wait on God to work? What's some other problems? Yeah, I think that's what the next one says. How could impatient cause a person to miss blessings? You ain't even got your book. I thought about Moses. He was leading the children of Israel out of Egypt. And he come out. What if he had said, "All right, let's just jump in and we're going to swim"? Well, he would have missed out on God's mighty power parting that Red Sea. Amen. What about when Joshua got down to the Jordan River? Amen. If he had said, "Hey, we just got to get across here," no, he just stopped and waited on God. Amen. What they would have missed? They would have missed we're still talking about it today. Amen. We're talking about crossing over into the victory, amen, into the promised land because they just waited on God. Amen. They was patient. Yeah, Moses could have said, and they could have got a head start. Can I tell you, they would have failed. Or they would have missed the blessings of God. They could have got across, but they would have missed out on a major part in victory that God had for them. Amen. A major victory they would have missed out on. Yeah. What's that? No, you're right. They wouldn't have made it. No, they wouldn't have all made it. There was young children. There was a lot. They would have failed. Amen. They would have lost a lot. How often does our impatience cost us so much? If we would have just waited on God. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, the biggest enemy of our faith is probably impatient. We live you just watch the fast food joints. Amen. Why? Because it's fast. Amen. They're thriving. They're the microwave meals. Why? They're fast. We want everything now. You see people at 16, 18 years old think they ought to be what a 40-year-old They're impatient. I get caught up in the same thing. I'm trying to figure out how my dad can go in he's 30 years older. Amen. We just got to be patient. But then we take it on the spiritual side. We think the same way. Amen. We want to try to take over and we want to take control and do it now and in our time frame, and it's not ours. It's waiting on God. And He'll give us the victory. Amen. And we get to enjoy the blessings of it when God just comes through. Look at number 2 here. We'll finish with number 2. It says, how is patience connected to bearing fruit in the Christian life? How is patience connected to bearing fruit in the Christian life? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it goes all together. Amen. You think about the fruit of the Spirit. It's not fruits of the Spirit. Amen. It's one. And because if you don't have one or one element's lacking, can I tell you, you're going to lack in all of them. Amen. And how it's essential to bearing fruit in the Christian life. Like that, patience will make you enjoy the Christian life. I wonder how many people miss enjoying, and they act like trying to live for God is such a toil and it's such a drag. If we would just wait on Him. Amen. You ever just get time to just sit down and just have fellowship with God? It's the greatest when you just put aside everything else and just enjoy God for just a little while. Forget about work. Forget about what needs to be due tomorrow. Forget about the children running around making them. Just sit back and just enjoy God. Amen. It just His goodness. Patience, just waiting for Him. We'll go to Him with the big things in life. We'll go to Him with the important decisions. What about every day? God, what do you have for me today? How do you want me to act? What do you want me to say? Who do you want me to talk to? God, what do you have for me? And waiting for Him. It says, is fruit produced instantaneously? It's a big word. I almost couldn't say it. Is fruit produced instantaneously? No. Amen. Brother Scooter, you plant that garden every year. I work in it. You plant one day and reap the benefits 5 minutes later? No. Amen. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes patience. Amen. And growing patience in our Christian life, it's not going to happen overnight. I wish I could say I'd arrived and I have perfect patience, but you could have just followed me around today and said, Stephen, you fell miserably in the area of patience, and I would agree, amen. Because I fell coming into church here, my microphone's messed up. Can I tell you, impatience kicked in immediately. I went into a grumpy mood. Caleb said, are you grumpy? I said, probably so. I'm impatient. Amen. I wanted the microphone to work. I got things to do, and we get impatient. Amen. It puts us in a bad mood. It ruins us. But it don't happen. I wish it did. I wish I had perfected it already in my life, but I haven't. And I don't think we ever do. Amen. I believe it's going to be a work as we look at it. It's a race, amen, and we're running this race. And I believe we're always patiently running the race to the finish line, and that's when God calls us home. Yes, sir. Right. Yeah. Yeah. He hindered it. Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Man, you could apply that to your spiritual life, amen. Everybody wants to run and do, and they want to. Sometimes there's just some development needs to happen, and it takes time. And our patience is the same way. It takes time, amen. You plant, and you think about when you prepare the soul. I mean, it's labor intensive. I didn't plant the sunflower. I watched somebody else plant my sunflowers, but I tested the soil and sent it off and gave them the soil sample back. Amen. But there was a great labor that went into that. Amen. I did hair the field up, but there was spraying that took place, and there was fertilizing that took place, and God had to provide the rain to it. Amen. And then if you was going to there's such labor intensive. Amen. It don't happen overnight. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and have victory and patience. Amen. And be perfect. I wish it worked that way, but it's not. And so it's a life of letting God grow us in this area. Lastly, it says, compare normal harvesting to fruit bearing in the Christian life. And that's kind of what I looked at there. Soul prep, planting, fertilizing, watering, nurturing it. Amen. It takes that in our Christian life, just like as you watch a child grow. Can I tell you, our faith and these fruit of the Spirit should grow like that in our life. Amen. But it takes you having a desire and diligently adding them to your faith. Amen. As we nurture up a child, we want to give them the healthiest things for them. They're not always going to like them. I tell you, in your spiritual life, the things that's good for you, you're not always going to like. Amen. Just like a child, you try to give me, my wife will tell you if it's baked or grilled chicken or vegetable. I don't like no vegetables. I only like steak, but I like chocolates. Jacob's smile. He likes chocolates. I like sweets. I like tater chips. All the things that's bad for you. That's what. Sometimes it takes those good things to really grow us and develop us. And it'd be nice if life was just always great and the red carpet rolled out in front of you when you hit, and it was lined with all the whatever you want on it, but it's not. Amen. There's days you wake up and it's just cloudy and it's overcast like the day was, and it's windy and it's cold and there's storms and there's everything's out there to challenge you. But can I tell you, it takes those in our life. It takes the storms, amen. It takes the rain, amen. It takes those hard times in life to grow this and cultivate this fruit of patience in our life. Anybody got anything they want to add? Say, don't go there, your patience will be tried. No, we're not going there. Give me a few years. God, I'm telling you, God's been working with me on patience, so give me a few years, we might try it. Amen. But it is work, and God's been working in my life through it. And hopefully you, not just as me teaching it, but hopefully it's working in your life. I'm hoping tomorrow when you're going to be dealing with something, you say, you know what, I'll just wait on God. And that's why we have this. That's why we have mentorship. Amen. I'd love to just get up and preach all the time, but we need some teaching sometime to help us in different areas and different subjects. And patience is one we can all use. Amen. I know y'all are perfectly patient people, but I'm not. Amen. Well, let's stand. We'll be dismissed with a word of prayer.